We'll be talking about pricing your hair color services. Just by the way, we'll be taking questions at the end, so you guys can ask your questions throughout, but we'll be answering them at the end. Our two speakers today are Josh Howard, the co-founder and CEO of Vish, and Tim Howard, the CIO of Vish. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time today. I know there's a lot of current Vish users in here, so some of this might be a bit redundant, but welcome to the ones that don't know much about Vish or much about what we're about to talk about. So I'm Josh. I'm Tim's brother. I came in this industry about 4 years ago. I used to work in medical research. So I've really poured through the data and worked with a lot of salon owners to try to understand what are some problems in this industry and just give some tips on what we've discovered thus far. And Tim's the stylist portion of the business. Tim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So just wanted, what Josh was saying there just about the industry. So my background is that I've been in the industry for 25 plus years with lots of experience doing various things, hair, from owning salons to being an educator. And what's really interesting is, and where we've kind of come together, my brother not being from the industry and me being from the industry, we've kind of put our heads together and really solved a lot of the problems, or have an approach to solve the problems that exist in the salon industry, which I know a lot of us face. A lot of the salon owners that are on the call today come from being a hairdresser. So we're really hoping that we're going to be able to shed some light on how to make our business, especially our color business, more profitable.
So today's agenda, I mean, the whole talk is about hair color service profitability. From there, we'll break that down into different ways to price services, what we see in the industry and sort of what we recommend. Just the importance of tracking color. I mean, what I've learned and, learned from just growing up around my brother's salon, but also work with a lot of salon owners is that, you've got a very expensive inventory that is not managed whatsoever. Some people just order what they need. So we'll really take a deep dive on what the importance of tracking color. Extra product charges, just what we see in the industry and what are some recommendations we have. And then finally, we'll just open the floor and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Now, if there's any questions while we're going through a specific slide, we can stop and answer, but we will likely, keep most of the questions till the end.
So we've set this aside. We've got about a 30-minute time frame for this portion of it, but we're happy to go over that if need be for the Q&A at the end as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I come from a medical research background. So I used to, work with hospitals, a lot of big data sets, and just try to find anomalies in the data or certain trends that would help correct things. So when I started working in this industry and we started looking at the data of the salons, now I asked my brother, I'm like, why do they not make the same amount of money on everything? And why are they doing certain things at a loss? And the answer was no one really knew, because there were a lot of the dogma that got pushed down to the manufacturers, and a lot of just general knowledge in the industry was that you had your total service revenue and you had your color cost, and that your color cost should be a percentage of total service revenue. But when we unpacked that, we actually looked at the bleaching services are typically the only ones that have healthy margins. And if you go down to your toners, they're done at a loss. And also the variance in your salon. So anybody like your managers, senior stylist, owners are always going to be more efficient. And you look at your junior stylists or even stylists that just don't really feel accountable, is they're using a lot more product. So not all services are created equal, and it's very important to understand where you're leaking profits.
So what we're going to discuss today is we're going to look at the 3 different types of way that are traditionally done or that can be done in salons for pricing services. So we've got all-inclusive pricing, separating pricing, product and service, and then pricing with product allowances. So the first one we're going to focus on is the all-inclusive pricing. And this works for a small percentage of salons, typically salons that have a high margin or that charge a lot for their services. I've seen salons in New York that charge $500, for example, for a balayage. That, for them to include all the product that they're going to use is fine. It doesn't affect their cost of goods. But for most of us, for smaller salons or the average salon that prices normally, it's not possible to go ahead to do this, to include all the product that the stylist wants to use. So the pros are, it's a standard practice, customers are used to it, it's very straightforward, very easy to price. The cons are that if somebody comes in and has long hair, thick hair, different hair from the average, is the salon is taking a loss on that person or making less money. Hairdressers are sort of just not accountable for the product, so they use as much as they want. So again, the margins are unpredictable. And often, if there are extra charges or extra bowls of color, the hairdresser forgets to charge this in most cases.
And one thing that I've noticed in this, so you can go back, sorry Sabrina, to the last slide. One thing that we have noticed with all-inclusive pricing, and we really work with a lot of salon owners to send us their POS data to see what they're actually charging. A lot of people have a price for a short, medium, large, or a quarter, half head, full head highlight. But if you actually look at what they're actually charging for, they're always charging for the cheaper service. So while like, okay, you can use a tube and a half or 2 tubes of color for a long service, well, that's great if they're actually charging on the front end, but they're not. Most stylists are picking the short hair and then they're using the allocation for the long hair. So it's great that a lot of salons have this all-inclusive pricing model, but in reality, they don't really charge for it.
And the same thing works as well, Josh, with like salons that we see that are time-based. So they charge for 1 hour service or 2 hour service or 3 hour. Is that, again, you know, that 1 hour service, there's a lot of product being used and it's not always allocated properly.
So separating product and service price, we've seen this in a number of ways. But the most common, what we see in the industry is just a service price on top of, a product price on top of the service fee. So what you'll see is like a $3 or $5 surcharge on all cut and color, which tries to take into account all of the product being used for a given period of time. That's an okay way of doing it, but it still introduces a lot of variability. Some of our salons do this where they separate parts and labor, which it's a good way accounting wise, and it definitely protects your bottom line, but it adds a lot of variability to your guests. If you went to, you know, if you go in to the same salon every 6 weeks, you're going for consistency. But if you're charging your guests a different price every time they come through, it's going to seem odd. So while accounting wise, we definitely recommend that this is a great way to protect your bottom line. Customer experience wise, it's not the greatest. If you went to a coffee shop or your restaurant or your salon or whatever, and you paid a different price for the same service every time you went there, it's a bit odd. So while this is a great way of doing it, it's definitely not the gold standard. And what we recommend is the next portion is pricing with product allowances. So this is how most of the salons that we work with were doing things. And they have an extra product charge when they break the base and they use more than that was allocated. So for a single process, a lot of salons at budget 40 grams of color. So it's a fixed price. And the stylist knows if I use 40 grams of color, there's no extra product charges to the front desk. So the stylist knows what's going on. The guest knows what's going on. But if they use 45 grams or 50 grams, then we can trigger an extra product charge to the front desk. It's very easy to explain to the customer, especially now after COVID, because people are coming less frequently or they were out for an extended period of time. That, you know, so to bring it back to your short, medium, or long pricing for hair, well, what we do is we recommend, okay, a single process is based on a short. So if you're allowed using 40 grams of color, it's $60. But if you use the 45 or 50 grams, we're going to trigger that extra product charge to the front desk. Or you can do this manually as well. It's just a lot more time consuming. But if you push that information to the front desk, you're going to maintain profitability across all your color service. It's going to be predictable profit margin. You're going to have predictable inventory counts. And anytime someone uses more color, you're going to generate extra revenue on that. Create it as a separate line item in your POS. So you have, you know, that you're covering off all of your product costs. And you're not stuck at the end of the month saying like, geez, I bought enough color for what was in the book, but we went through more color and we didn't have the money. So this is definitely the gold standard. It's consistency for your guests and then consistent profits as well by setting that threshold. It's, you know, Tim, you can speak to this a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, we do it. A lot of the salons that we interact with and most salons out there do charge for extra product, but it's not a set amount and it's usually an extra bowl charge. The problem with doing it that way is how much is an extra bowl? Are they allowed to use 20 grams? Are they allowed to use 50 grams? And then it's reliant upon that hairdresser verbally or manually updating front desk at checkout, which we know doesn't happen consistently. The other side of the coin is when you're doing an extra bowl, typically these hairdressers are paid commission on it. They haven't added any extra time to the work and they're getting paid on the product, which right away, the extra charge that you did to the customer, you're now losing because you're sharing it with commission. So what Josh was saying is you add a line item in your POS, which is extra product charge, which is typically not commissioned. So we want to know how all of you, we're going to do a poll right now. So how do you price your hair color? Do you use all-inclusive pricing, separate product and service price, or pricing with product allowance? So we'll take a minute and let everybody just answer the poll, and then we're going to share the answers at the end of the call as well.
Tim, you want to do the Jeopardy song now?
Do, 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 do. Do you know it, Josh?
Yeah, that's you. That's not me, man. And I'm not sure we were supposed to mention there. Maybe we talked a little bit further. We're talking about product allowances. So if you're budgeting for a highlight, a scoop of bleach, or 2 scoops of bleach for a half head highlight, what we're seeing right now in the industry is a lot of people are grabbing that high lift product off the shelf, which has 200 to 300% increase in price. So it's really important that if you budgeted for a scoop of bleach, but someone used a product that was 3 times as much, that extra charge goes to your guest as well. And that's something that we see across the board. People are grabbing these products all the time. Or if you look in like the L'Oreal line, if you've got a single process and they're budgeting to use Majorel, but someone grabs a Noah, then you're charging for that extra product as well. So it's not just the amount, it's also the additional cost that we push forth.
Yeah, and the great thing about that as well is that if you have somebody, and we'll talk about waste in a minute, that's just a heavy user, it's going to be made up for. So somebody's heavy-handed, the extra product charges take care of that as well.
So when we go to here's with the Q&A, I'm actually interested. So people that use the all-inclusive pricing, I want to, if someone should just put a quick note of whether that's a good thing and they like doing that, or it's just the easiest thing to manage and they would prefer to move to something that was more easily managed.
Yeah, sounds great. So Sabrina, is that it? Is that it for the poll, or do we need to give more time for that?
No, I think they all came back. Did you see the responses come through?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about why we track color and the benefits and the problem that there is with waste in the industry. So we know that hair color waste is a massive, massive problem in our industry. It does a lot of things. It damages the bottom line of salons and makes salons' margins much tighter, but it also has a massive impact on our environment as well. In 2019, there were 15 million pounds of hair color released into the environment in USA alone. So that ends up in our waterways, it ends up in our air, and it ends up in our landfills. A typical salon, and when we start this, it's not uncommon for us to see salons that are wasting 40% of their hair color inventory. It's just going down the drain. It's never even making it on the client's head.
And that number is actually interesting, Tim, because when we started all of this, we did a lot of industry research, and we thought that was 20%, and everybody was like, oh, we don't waste that much color. And we thought 20%, but we actually put our technology out in the wild. We quickly realized that number was 25 to 40%. Especially with bleaching services. I mean, you see people, even when we're in salons, you see them grabbing that scoop and they're just scooping bleach and they're grabbing the developer and they say, well, I just like this certain consistency. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you write down the consistency you like so you're not wasting it every time? So, bleach is definitely the biggest offender here.
Yeah, and one of the things that, Josh, we talk about all the time is that product charges to hairdressers and what that does as a culture. So if we're charging hairdressers the product charges or a percentage of the services for the inventory use, they kind of have this feeling that they can use whatever they want. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the call, some alternative methods so that we're saving the salons money by not wasting, but also that the hairdressers are not being billed. Recycling is great, and companies like Green Circle are fantastic because they're doing a great job at building a recycling program for all these harmful chemicals and also the bottles that they come in. But what we want to do is we want to reduce the waste before it even gets to this recycling. So we've come up with a great solution that helps reduce the waste as well.
Yeah, we see reduce. We basically, using our system for a given period of time, when salons use a certain function in our system, and they do it religiously, we can eliminate waste completely out of the salon within reason, besides the stuff that's actually physically stuck to the side of the bowl. And I don't think we talked about this a lot, but the most common method we see is the bucket method. We see this in a lot of salons is they tried to mitigate waste before by having a bucket, collecting all the waste on the color bar at the end of the week, bringing the staff together and then shaming the staff. Like, look all the waste you've done now, stop doing that. But actually not giving them a solution of how can we actually stop this from happening? Everybody, doesn't like to waste, but if you don't actually give them a strategy or a system in place to mitigate the waste, as soon as that goes away, or it's almost impossible to manage because they have the thing, don't waste, but also be fast and be efficient. So it's
Yeah.
really important to put a system in place to help your staff.
So we just want everyone to answer the poll here as well. So just want to know how you are currently tracking your waste, or if you are tracking your waste. And just on that point, what Josh said, I mean, Steve Jobs had this exact, problem when we came out with iTunes, and that everybody was stealing music. And instead of, restricting everybody from stealing music and punishing people for stealing music, his solution was come up with a better way to do it. Come up with a more simple, easy way to get people what they want. So if we have a system that makes hairdressers work more efficiently and reduces the waste, it's a win-win.
On that note, Tim, can you make sure that you wear your Steve Jobs turtlenecks next time?
I knew that was coming. So we got 52% of the poll people are not tracking their waste. 16% saying they're using a recycling service. 12% we dump our waste in buckets to show our stylists, and 20% are others. So we'd like to hear what those other methods are as well, sort of at the end of the call, if we can have a quick.
A point you've always made, Tim, that resonates with a lot of salon owners is, and this is kind of why this whole thing came about, right? You're walking by your sink and you're seeing a bunch of your product was being thrown down the drain. Can you imagine walking up behind your salon and seeing 40% of your retail just sitting in a dumpster? You'd lose your mind, and you spend more money on color than you do on retail most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like 40% inventory throwing away is just, it's not sustainable, and it's just insane. So go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. So we want to guarantee profits in all services. And this is why it goes back to the point that Tim originally made with all-inclusive pricing, where, if you're including your product cost just in with the service, that works very well if you have a very high ticket. But that is not the case for most salons. I know, Tim, that wasn't the case in your salon. So, and also, we're in a difficult time right now where a lot of people have restricted budgets and you have reduced capacity. So you can't just increase the pricing across the board. So if you increase the price across the board, that's gonna, it might get your customers to go to another location, or maybe just come back less frequently, versus we unpack your services and look at the profitability per service, and from there we can ensure that you have the same profitability based on the cost of the product that actually went into that service.
And here's the one thing that we don't always necessarily take into account, but a lot of hair color manufacturers do price increases once or twice a year. And how is your service menu going to adjust that? You've printed your menu, you've put the price out there to your customer, and it's hard to make those small adjustments to your menu to maintain profitability by changing the price of the service based on manufacturer cost. We quickly adjust to that, so that if there is a price increase, it is reflected in the extra product charges.
And we are also seeing too, because like I said, we look through a lot of POS data, and we know that the three top services are a single process or a root retouch, a toner, and a half head highlight. But we're also seeing some trends. There's like a lot of color lines, or almost all the color lines are coming out with a vibrant line now. They're more expensive products. So if a customer comes in and is requesting something with a lot of vibrant color in it, well, your cost per application just tripled. So the time didn't change, but the cost of the product went in. So that's when it's really important, is that threshold up. So then the customer comes in and they're expecting this service, that the salon owner is not then at the end of the month footing that bill. So it's really important to understand the products that go into the services you provide.
Absolutely. On that point alone, Josh, consulting with a lot of salons with Vish is that we're seeing that when you're doing vibrant colors, that a standard amount, or the average amount that the hairdressers are using on a guest, are 2 tubes of color. So anywhere from 100 to 140 grams worth of product to do a single application. And because we're not using developer with those services, the product doesn't spread so easily. That's why we use so much more. So just make sure that if you're doing those services, that you've got a service item on your menu that is specifically for direct dyes or bright colors that don't use developer. So we'll just look at, this is what a ticket looks like, which comes through to your front desk team. So one of the great things about having an app like this on your front desk is gives the front desk team the power to charge what should be charged. They're not reliant upon going back to the hairdresser to ask if any charges occurred that were different from what was booked. So in this example, we have a 3/4 height highlight that was booked. There's 200 grams worth of color used. Now, what is allotted for this service is 2 scoops of bleach with a developer, which is roughly 150 grams. But you can see that 200 grams were used. So what we've generated is an extra $4.67 charge, which is cost of inventory times 2. But also what's interesting is that you'll see that the toner add-on is on the bill. Now, this wasn't booked. The hairdresser decided with the customer that the toner was needed, they added it. So in addition to capturing the $4.67 in extra product charges, we also captured $47.70 that wouldn't be on the bill. So the bill went from being $110 to $162.37. The customer expects to pay this amount because they had the services done. If that toner was missed and wasn't charged and remembered the next time, now it's not a positive experience for the customer because the bill is fluctuating.
And what we can also see here, so the customer always expects that outcome to be the same. So if they don't get the toner applied next time, there's going to be a difference in the actual hair color. But the cool thing about our system, and you could do this manually as well, but if you adjust that formula the next time that guest comes in, because there is a wasted part of this service, that ticket will actually become cheaper because that product, so say she used 93.4 grams, most toners only need 30 grams of color plus developer, so it should be about 60. If they're doing 1 toner. So the next time that guest comes in, the ticket would drop in price because the less product was used. And then that also encourages clients to come back on a more frequent basis because the product fees will be less.
And it also encourages the hairdressers to pay attention to the waste and reweigh their bowls. So by reweighing their bowl, we're eliminating waste in the environment, but we're also reducing the cost of the customer's bill when they come in the next visit.
So this is the impact. I actually put these numbers together when COVID hit. We were stressed. We're medium-sized business at this point, but we were pretty stressed and all the salons closing. We're pretty close with our salon owners, and I'm the one that spends a lot of time with the data and just looking, well, what is the impact? So I called Tim, so a ½ inch of hair a month is what he fed back to me of how quickly hair grows on average. So I ran the numbers on that based on our data and what that impact will have on color usage. So what you would see is an additional this is an 8-chair salon that does about 500 services per month, is you would see an additional $6,000 in product use if rather than coming out every 6 weeks, they're coming out 10 weeks. And if you push that out over 3 months, and I did this at the beginning of COVID, which 3 months, some salons were actually pushed out even longer, you have an increase of product cost when those guests return. So your guests are coming back with that extra demand, so that you went through $12,000 in extra product. A lot of salons did not want to increase their service prices, which is completely reasonable. So what we did is we introduced the extra product charges, made sure the salons in our network truly understood the impact of this. So you're talking about a $36,000 swing by having a proper strategy in place versus just saying, I'm going to eat the cost, because we also knew that there was a lot of salon owners selling gift certificates. And they also had PPE costs. So you have a reduced capacity. So you get this flux of customers coming back with this crazy product fee. So we put it in place for a lot of our salons, and they actually, our profit margin per service went up. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call who didn't have a strategy in place are feeling the pain, because as they open back up, wow, we just flew through color inventory. And I've mentioned before, and you're going to see, because a lot of people are on reduced budgets now, people are not going to come back in the 6-week interval, or some people won't. So if they're coming 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or they're taking that extended time between visits, completely fine. Make sure you're charging for that additional product that they use. And so, and then when they have that conversation, if you show, the information when it hits our front desk, we normally use 100 grams, but today we use 200. They understand, the stylist understands, and the salon owner is protected at the end of the month.
And one of the great things about the extra product charges is that it's not like the flat arbitrary extra bowl fee, which hairdressers don't like to charge, because sometimes it's $20 and $25. That the prices are lower because it's cost of inventory times 2 in most cases. So the product charges aren't excessive, but they mount up, as you can see here. So over 500 services in 3 months is an extra $24,000. So how many of you, how are you capturing your product charges? So is it bowl charges? Are you letting them go? What did you do even specifically, think about this, after COVID, when you have customers coming back using 2 and 3 times the amount of color because their roots are long or because they've been coloring their hair on their own? So how are you capturing product charges? And how are you?
And Tim, you should read the question next time.
I should. You know I'm not scripted, Josh. So that's, I mean, that's pretty much, I think, Sabrina, I think this is pretty much everything that we're going to go over, and we'll kind of pull these results at the end and maybe open it up to a Q&A. We just need to see those poll results, Sabrina. There we go. So capturing, so 68% of people on the call are capturing their product charges, 18% are not, and 14 are not sure if they are. And maybe they mean that they're not capturing them consistently.
Well, and that's one of the things. So I work, work with a lot of salon owners, and a lot of people have that extra bowl charge. And they think they're charging for it. But when you actually look at it and you see that, your owners and the senior stylists are carrying all the weight, and you look at profit margins, like, oh yeah, we must be charging for this. But you look at it and you compare it to Vish data, it's like your cost per application is double what you thought it was. So there's you could be making an additional $3,000 or $4,000 in product charges a month that are spread out over all of your guests that are not commissionable price revenue. And that is, that could pay your rent. That could do a number of things. So it's something that a lot of salon owners, even some of this group, you think that you are. It's amazing that you are, but in the reality, we know that just sometimes that's not the case.
And here's the thing that I think that a lot of salon owners shy away from product charges because of the conversation. They're worried about how their staff are going to perceive it, and they're going to worry about how the customers are going to respond to it. It's a very simple conversation. And one of the examples that I always like to use is that if you have a customer who comes every 6 weeks and they come religiously to your salon every 6 weeks, well, their price should be the same every time they come in. But what happens when they go on vacation and they come back and it's been 12 weeks? The hairdresser's paid the same amount of money for the service, so they're not losing anything. The customer is paying the same amount for the service, but the salon is less profitable on that service, and it shouldn't be. It's a very easy conversation to have with your customer, is that you've gone 6 weeks longer than normal. There's an incremental charge for that extra product that we use.
And even from the stuff, from the coverage, sometimes, Tim, you're the expert here, but needs change. And sometimes when the customer becomes more gray over a period of time, they require more color for coverage, which is
well, one of the most common things is that, when your customer comes in and we do a mids and ends refresh, is that's often given away. And there's typically 40 to 60 grams used to do that refresh. One of the biggest culprits is at the sink when we're doing toners. Two things happen with toners. The hair's wet and it's messy and tangled because it's just been rinsed from highlights. And two, toners take quickly in cases. So oftentimes there's so much product used just to get it in, to get it quickly, as you all know. And toners, we know across the board, are just a loss for salons unless they're using extra product charges.
And what we recommend is definitely separating, even though we know that, most, if not all, bleaching services require a toner, that you create it as a separate service, because a toner might have 3 toners in it, and you need to track that. Because with a lot of salons that we work with, but when they first using our system, we have all of these services that are combined services. I mean, if you're combining everything into one menu item, it's really hard to see where you're losing money. So even if you're including it in the price, which is something we don't recommend, but you can do, just create it as another service so you can actually look and see what's being done. And when you're using our system, you can see, okay, well, they did a toner, but why was the cost so high? So, well, they're using 4 different bowls to get that toner.
And then the other thing is what Josh was saying earlier, is that we look at the individual hairdressers as well. You will find people on your team that are consistently using 2 and 3 times more product than other people. So that opens up the transparency that you can go and observe how they're applying color and have a conversation and plan some education around it. So there's not only are we wasting color in the sink, we're also wasting product on top of the guest's head by people just being too heavy-handed. And so there's a lot of insight.
Sorry, but yeah, one thing that I guess we haven't touched base on is that a lot of stylists are simply creative people, and they shouldn't be responsible for really managing the inventory. They should be the end goal is making the client happy and doing great color. And, just as much as there's a bunch of economics behind this, but it's just the same as an expensive pair of scissors or an expensive blow dryer. It's a great tool to give to your creatives, to give to your stylists, so they can do great work. And a lot of people like it where they don't have to talk about it anymore. They just use what they need to do to get their client outcome, what they're expecting. And then that information just gets pushed to the front desk. So then your front desk staff are responsible for collecting the money. And like, you know, we saw it firsthand in this business. I realized that Tim gave away everything for free because he's just the creative, the stylist, the people pleaser, just wants to see this out there. Whereas I know that we actually have to make money. So like there is that dynamic in a salon where, you know, when you're dealing with a client all the time, you're a people pleaser. You don't want to talk about money. So just remove that conversation from them and it will become.
And it's a natural, it's not a malicious thing. It's just that I'm doing this creative work and I'm getting judged on the quality of my creative work with the customer right in front of me. So if a customer looks and says, oh, I'm not quite sure how I love these highlights, immediately they look to how can I discount this? Maybe I'm not going to charge her for the toner. But when you take what Josh is saying, when you take that conversation away from the hairdresser, give the front desk team the power to see what the bill should be, they have no problem charging it and explain it to the customer. And hairdresser, I mean, you know, we like to be creative and build these relationships. You want to put systems in place to give them more time to do that and take away the business side for them. Just provide them the tools that they need.
I think
all right, so
the Q&A now.
All right, so if you want to just post any questions that you have, Josh and I will do our best to answer them. And anybody who's, so we have a couple things after this webinar that we'll be sending out some follow-up emails with everybody. So there's an opportunity, if those of you who are current Vish users who do not have your product charges set up properly or set up the way that you want them set up, you can book a meeting with us and we can go through and we can reset or set up your product charges for you. For those of you who aren't currently using Vish, there's going to be an opportunity at this end of the webinar to book a demo with us so that we can give you one-on-one information on Vish as well. But we're open to any questions that you have, so feel free to just post them and we'll answer as many as we can today.
So there you go.
So we're having a product price increase. Do I just email the new costs to you or do you do it? No, absolutely. You can email the cost to us. We'll be able to change the product pricing for you. And then typically what we do when we know that a manufacturer has a product price increase, then we'll do that across the board once we verified with the salons based on your region or based on your country.
So then your recommendation is for front desk to explain these charges, correct? Well, a couple things. What we really find is that this question never comes up because the extra product fees only end up being $3 to $6. So it's just putting the system in place. And if the customer is questioning that, then when they have the data in front of them to explain it to them, you know, when a stylist, most salons we work with, you know, they're salons that they're not discount service providers. So your client is expecting to pay for the services. Oftentimes you find it's just a perception in the industry where they're discounting for no reason. So we would suggest, just like coffee shops, restaurants, like when a client is getting a service, you charge them for what you plan as an owner to charge them. The front desk has the information. You know, remove the stylist from the equation if you can.
And to further that, in all the interactions that we have with salons, and when there's questions about the product charges or they seem too much, I always ask the salon owner, who's complaining? Is it the hairdresser or the customer? And 95% of the time, it's the hairdresser that's questioning the charge, not the customer. It's very rare. So again, it's back to that hairdresser just not wanting to charge. We empower and we train the front desk team so that they know how to communicate this with the customer. Toby's got one there. We set up Vish in the salon, but post-COVID, we want our team to review it with you. Can I set this up with you or with the UK? Toby, yeah, we can absolutely meet with you, myself, you and Tom can get together again and we can go over that and reset it up in your locations.
We currently have, so anonymous attendee, we currently have small service charge on all color services taken out prior to commission being calculated to cover the standard amount of product used per application. We have an extra bowl charge that has no service charge and pays commission. Do you recommend this model with exception and not paying commission on extra color use? If not, What is the standard practice in salons you currently work with? This is a very good scenario, and I can actually connect you with the salon owner I did this with. She did the same thing, and she charged a service fee for all of her services, but took it out before she paid commission on it. But it goes to the thing like, why are you charging your client? Why are you charging your staff for what the customer needs? So we went through it. She was an 8-chair salon out of the west coast of Canada. With the reconfiguration, I took it, set up the product allowances, and pushed it back to the client. There's a $65,000 difference by just doing the accounting changes. And it wasn't a crazy busy salon. What she found is what she was charging wasn't covering off all of the product fee. She actually lowered her service prices, stopped charging her staff, then pushed the incremental charge back to the clients. And then that cost was spread amongst all our clients, and she netted additional $60,000. So more.
Yeah, and Josh, you made a great point as well when you said the chef doesn't pay for the ingredients that when he makes a dish of food or makes a steak, right? So that's a really good way to look at it. Is Vish gives you the ability to, again, charge the customer and not the staff, which also reduces the amount of product they would use.
And it's understandable why people do this, because the margins are so razor thin. You're doing all the services, spending these marketing dollars, all this sort of, and you got to find some way to recoup these product fees. There's a better way, and we are both available to show you and look at your numbers and make some recommendations.
So Lori asked a question about how do you explain why you started charging this way? So that's a great question. And then now is a great time to have this conversation with your customers and your staff. Is that we know that the cost of hair color keeps increasing, and we don't want to necessarily keep bumping up that flat service fee. We don't want to keep changing our menu. We want to be able to charge for the work that we do. So by implementing product charges for somebody with my length hair is going to have a very different cost associated than somebody who has long, thick hair. Alternatively, we want to encourage our customers to come more frequently. And if they come more frequently, it will reduce the amount of product charges that are billed to them. So the other side of the coin is that, we're at half capacity right now. It is very important that we charge properly for these services. And we charge our customers for the amount of color that they're using so we can keep our doors open. So now is more than ever a critical time to change the way that we're looking at the service pricing.
And we work with a lot of salon owners and stuff. And the reality is, if your clients aren't willing to pay the amount of money it takes for you to make money, then they're not a good client, and you need to get rid of them and get a new client. That's a very, very rare circumstance. But I came into this industry. I worked at banks, universities, and hospitals. And one of the things that I really discovered when I came to this industry was there was a crazy amount of education. And people are always working so hard to perfect their craft, but then they're afraid to charge for what they spend all of this time and effort. And it's a very difficult job. Stylists are on their feet for 8 to 10 hours a day, and usually crazy footwear. And it's you deserve to make money. This perception of you're just not going to make money sometimes is not fair for anybody. And if your clients don't get that, then they're not a good client. But we are, there's lots of ways that Tim can unpack this. I'm a little bit more callous when it comes to explaining these things, but Tim can certainly offer some suggestions there as well.
I'm a little warmer and fuzzier than Josh. Okay, so Olivia asked, how do you suggest setting the product allowance? And do you have an idea of what the profit margin on color services should be?
I can take that one.
Yeah, Josh, right? You go ahead. You have a good answer for that.
Tim's answer is give everything away for free. How do you suggest a product allowance? So what we do is we ask you you as an owner, if you're behind the chair, what do you typically use? If you don't know what the product allowances should be, we can give you recommendations based on your region, but based on your color line. Profit margins can vary by region, right? And the percentage of product allowance is going to be relative to how much you charge. If your rent is low, then your margin doesn't need to be as high in your service. If your rent is crazy high, then you need to make a higher margin. But making margin across all of your services, and obviously if someone's doing a toner at the sink, it's not going to be the same margin as a highlight that's taking a lot of taking much more time. It's very individualized to your salon, but
I mean, for the most part, Josh, I mean, we could talk about, a lot of the manufacturers come out with these arbitrary numbers that you need to be 6% or 12% back bar. So, we can get much more pointed and much more direct about that profitability by setting it up. And again, like we were saying earlier in the call, bleaching services are very low cost of goods. But when we get into toners, we get into color services, high lift color, it increases. So,
and that's when that 6%, you know, I know there's some manufacturers been pushing your professional product fee should be 6% of your total service sales. When I actually unpacked all this, I'm like, well, that's because your highlights are 2%, your toners are, 50%. So we work with you. We're more than happy as a part of the consultation. If you want, you can bring us all of your prices and we can recommend what you should be charging and what these product allowances should be to make sure that all you need to do as a salon owner is to make sure that people are in the chair. And if they're in the chair, and if you can have a certain, like, if you're over 60% capacity of rebooking rate, then we can make sure that you're going to guarantee profit margins and you'll have a healthy balance sheet at the end of the year.
Okay, so Karen, so it is Wi-Fi driven, and that's, as most salon software is that we want to, we need the internet to operate properly. So most of the cases, and where we're really moving towards with Vish, is to integrate with all salon software. And in order for us, for you to get your appointments, you need your internet connection, as does Vish.
It does work offline right now, but anything gets pushed back to the front desk needs Wi-Fi. So if you have intermittent Wi-Fi, and we see this, is that we always recommend to have strong Wi-Fi, but we know that in a lot of strip malls, it's not the reality. So it's cutting in and out all the time. The tablets themselves function offline, but they need Wi-Fi connection to push the information back to our cloud, and they needed to push it to the front desk. And we also needed to pull down from the POS, which we're integrated with most of the POS companies out there.
Yeah, Josh, Brenda just asked if we're integrated with most, and and she asked specifically with Booker, and we are integrated with Booker.
Yeah.
Josh, you want to just maybe list, or on our website, actually, you can kind of go to our website.
So Karen, your POS is, currently your POS is server based, as in locally hosted. Which POS is this? Because we do have solutions for that as well. We do work with Millennium. We are not currently integrated with Millennium, but as they move towards Mevo 2, that is something we're certainly looking into. I have a meeting with their dev team today, actually. So we have some SalonBiz we are integrated with.
And yes, SalonBiz we are. So we recently, in the last few months, integrated with SalonBiz. So a lot of our customers were existing customers who were already using SalonBiz. If you're a SalonBiz user, you can reach out to us and we can talk about migrating your data so that you'll be able to be integrated with SalonBiz.
We are integrated with Forest. We do anticipate being integrated with Mevo 2 very, very soon. But okay, the scales can be plugged in. We the new scale that we have is a 25-hour built-in rechargeable battery life. They work.
So this is a new scale that we work with now. This is the IKEA scale. It's a fantastic scale. So we moved towards this. We've been wanting to work with this company for a few years. We have custom built software that works with them. And the great thing about the IKEA scale is that it's got a 25-hour built-in battery. So what we recommend with salons is that you run it off its battery during daytime, plug it in the evening, and then work all day long with it. The other great thing about the scale is that it's sealed. It's a waterproof scale. So the one thing about Vish, and other companies are going to come out and are going to be doing some things that we are doing. One of the benefits that we have is that we are integrated with most salon software providers, which that's sort of exclusive to us. But also we have the highest quality scale that is available on the market worldwide.
You can give us a call, Tony. I'll give you a call after this, and we'll just
and Lori as well. Yeah, Lori as well. We reach out to us and we can send you out new scales. Full disclosure, this is David, her husband. I am not a stylist. I am her front desk manager. She is currently working behind the chair. Thanks, David. So yeah, if you want some more information, and one of the great things about Vish is the solution for the hairdressers. It's very easy to use, very easy to implement in your salon. But for salon owners, managers, we will give you the data so you can make smart decisions. We have our data is very pointed. You can see a lot of valuable data that's never been available before to the industry. I remember years ago, before Vish started, that hearing Van Council from Van Michael Salon talk about it would take him 3 to 6 months to get accurate data on his hair color business. And by the time he got that, the opportunity or the problems had already passed. So we have live to the minute, deep insight into your health of your color business. So Don asked about the iPad, the update to the iPads. So actually, yeah, Josh, if you want to just take this quickly and talk about the solution that we found.
So just to give everybody an idea, so in our network, we've had some syncing issues where the tablets weren't talking to each other since COVID. What had happened was because of the reduced capacity of the iPads and because we pull all of your formulas down on your iPad, what was happening was when people were offline for a long period of time, it overwhelmed the iPads. It was locking the pin pad. So we had to throttle our syncing algorithm to slow it down. When that happened, it created issues if you have bad Wi-Fi. We do have a fix coming out for that in the next 24 to 48 hours. And at that point, the system will not change until we release Vish 3.0, which will be coming in the fall.
Yep. Chandra, yeah, absolutely. We spoke this morning, I believe, Chandra. So if you want to reach back out to me today, we can talk about your salon biz. And Steph, we would love to. We'd love to re-engage post-COVID. So I believe I think you're in the UK. You can just reach out to myself or Tom. My email is timothy@getvish.com, and we can set up a meeting to get you restarted with Vish.
And I think it's important for everybody, whether you're an internal Vish user or you're considering Vish, is that, if it didn't get rolled out properly, we're a growing company as well. We're constantly improving on what we do. So we'll take that upon ourselves because we're learning a lot, and it is a lot to change culture in your salon, but we're committed to working closely with you. If you want to meet with us once a week, once a month, once a quarter, until this really gets dialed in. I mean, if you get a 6 to 8 chair salon, you should put $50,000 to $100,000 of the profit on your bottom line by using the system. We are growing quickly, and we're going to continue to improve our platform. We will never lose that personal touch. So if you
would like,
touch, we apologize. And going forward, myself and Tim are always available.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't had a data review in a while with Vish, you can book it anytime with myself or Josh. So for those of you who don't know, we do data reviews every 30 days. So we'll go over your previous 30 days with a business. We'll go into a deep dive with you. We'll find areas that could be improved upon and show you some of the gains that you've made. So you can reach out to either of us if you'd like a data review. All right, so I think we've answered. That was good. We answered 21 questions.
And that was great engagement. Really appreciate everybody for sticking on. And we're going to try to do these and different things every month. And honestly, we're really happy that people open back up, and we're here to help. So just keep an eye on what we're doing. There's new innovation coming all the time, and we're expanding our customer service team all the time. So, and then one last thing is we are releasing also an ambassador program. So if anybody really loves Vish and wants us help to spread the word, we've got a pretty good compensation model for people in our network. So feel free to message us back. We'll be sending us some documentation to anybody that wants to help spread to their network.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. It was really enjoyable. We hope to do these more frequently and more often. So keep in touch. Let us know if you'd like to meet. Anything that we can help you with, we'd be happy to.